This is the story of Elon Musk's The Boring Company and its Vegas Loop tunnels under Las Vegas, a supposedly innovative transit project that racked up nearly 800 environmental violations, while Nevada regulators quietly erased millions in potential fines. Beneath the famous lights of Las Vegas, a $7 billion tunnel empire and state agencies work together to literally bury toxic evidence under the desert and dump the risks onto working families. Today, we dig into the official documents to find out exactly why. The classic Vegas dream. The idea that anyone could come here and feel like a high roller is completely dead. A cold, highly optimized corporate machine has taken its place, built for one thing only: extracting maximum profit from the super rich, while treating the average visitor and the average local like an inconvenience. Regular Nevadans now need to pull in over $111,000 a year just to afford a standard single-family home. That is a crushing 50% surge since 2020. How did we let this happen? And this is where it gets so much worse. Because public authorities are pouring massive political capital into an unproven private transit tunnel, while completely ignoring the working class. Stick with me as we analyze 7 distinct shifts in this unfolding scandal. We are going to examine missing government records, terrifying chemical burns, and a housing market that leaves regular folks with absolutely nothing. Later, we will look at the specific legal maneuvers that explain exactly how a prominent company escapes accountability and leaves the public holding the bag. Part 1. The bulk discount. To the casual tourist, the Vegas Loop looks like a sleek, futuristic marvel. But underneath the flashing neon, an absolute environmental disaster was quietly unfolding. Between 2023 and 2025, the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection, NDEP, documented an absolutely staggering 789 violations against The Boring Company. 689 of those were for missed independent site inspections. We are talking about unapproved digging and illegal discharges of drilling fluids right into the public storm drains. When you sit down and actually do the math, the maximum penalties for this level of corporate negligence should have easily crossed the $3 million mark. So, what did the regulators actually charge this $7 billion tech giant? A mere $242,000. And this is where it gets truly insane. The official justification given by the state for reducing the fine was the, quote, extraordinary number of violations. You heard that correctly. The corporate counterpoint here is that processing that many individual tickets was simply too burdensome for the bureaucratic system. Officials claim they are just streamlining the penalty process to encourage future compliance, while the Boring Company insists they are working hard to fix the issues. But here is the ugly truth. If a local Vegas plumber dumps hazardous waste down a city storm drain, they lose their license immediately. They do not get a friendly sit-down settlement. Yet, when a massive corporate entity treats the Nevada desert like a private dumping ground, they receive a massive bulk discount on their fines. While executives sit in boardrooms and call this optimizing operations, to the working-class taxpayers of Clark County, it feels like an absolute betrayal. It proves without a shadow of a doubt that if you have enough money and political leverage, the rules simply do not apply to you. Part 2. The firefighter burns. But if you thought the environmental damage was bad, wait until you hear what happened to the people actually going down into those tunnels. During a training drill, 2 Clark County firefighters entered the Vegas loop system. They ended up hospitalized with severe chemical burns. The toxic muck inside those work zones was so corrosive that a former employee recalled seeing a massive chunk of skin peel off right along with a firefighter's sock. Nevada OSHA stepped in and did exactly what they are supposed to do. They hit the boring company with over $400,000 in willful safety citations. And that is when the invisible hand of corporate power took over. According to massive investigations by Fortune and local media, the president of the boring company immediately called the governor's office. A high-level, closed-door meeting took place, and within roughly 24 hours, every single penny of those safety fines was entirely rescinded. Nevada OSHA and the governor's office pushed back, claiming the citations were just legally insufficient and adamantly denying any political influence. But what nobody expected was what happened next. The official case diary entry, the actual government document proving that this high-level meeting took place, completely disappeared from the public file. Poof. Gone. State Senator Rochelle Nguyen sat in a legislative hearing and reminded everyone that altering or concealing a public record is a Category C felony in Nevada. Yet, not a single police report was ever filed. Ask yourself this. If a small business owner in Las Vegas injures 2 first responders, do they get to call the governor and have their fines magically erased the very next day? Of course not. The entire system is rigged. What state lawmakers are now calling blatant special treatment is just another Tuesday for a billion-dollar empire. Part 3. The Mystery. Green Pond. And this is where the story moves from closed-door meetings right into people's actual backyards. In late 2025, residents near a Vegas Loop construction site off Paradise Road in Paradise, Nevada, in unincorporated Clark County, woke up to a truly terrifying sight. A massive pit of bright green liquid had randomly appeared at the site. Locals immediately reported a nauseating odor, and an environmental engineer warned local news that this could easily be drilling muds laced with dangerous heavy metals. So, what exact steps did the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection take to protect the public? Absolutely nothing. State regulators visited the site, but they did not pull a single water sample. Instead of running tests, they allowed the company to literally bury the pond with dirt. The corporate spin machine kicked into high gear here. Boring company representatives insisted this was just a harmless, temporary construction pond, posing, quote, zero health risks. They expect the public to simply take their word for it, without a shred of scientific proof. But here is the ugly truth. Assemblyman Howard Watts pointed out the obvious nightmare scenario. Because no testing was ever done, we cannot know if that unknown chemical profile is actively contaminating the Las Vegas groundwater aquifer. Think about that for a second. A massive chunk of the city's drinking water comes directly from the ground. If an ordinary citizen had a glowing green chemical spill in their driveway, hazmat teams would shut down the entire neighborhood immediately. But when that spill belongs to a deeply connected tech company, state regulators just grab a shovel and help them hide it. It shows a total, catastrophic collapse of public safety priorities. Part 4. The custom-built loophole. But you might be wondering, how exactly does a massive transportation project operating directly under a major American city manage to skip so many basic safety checks in the first place? The answer is infuriatingly simple. They just lobbied to rewrite the rules. Let's look at the philosophy driving this operation. The founder of this company has publicly argued that getting permission in advance is, quote, largely terrible, and actually prefers just paying penalties later if something goes wrong. And they brought that exact mindset right into Clark County. According to detailed investigations from ProPublica and CityCast Las Vegas, the Boring Company successfully pressured local officials to completely exempt the Vegas Loop from the standard, quote, amusement and transportation system permit. This is not some anonymous contractor. This is Elon Musk's The Boring Company, operating under a custom exemption from Clark County that stripped away normal safety oversight. Unlike the Las Vegas monorail and other conventional transit systems that had to go through years of reviews, the Vegas Loop was carved out of the normal amusement and transportation system permit entirely. The corporate counterpoint was incredibly predictable. Executives argued that their cutting-edge tunnels simply did not fit into old, outdated regulatory boxes. They demanded a custom-tailored oversight plan, one that would supposedly foster innovation without slowing down their rapid progress. But here is the ugly truth about what that quote-unquote innovation actually looked like. That custom agreement deliberately stripped away the requirement for multiple layers of independent inspections. It entirely erased the mandate for immediate injury reporting. And worst of all, it relied heavily on safety studies provided by the company itself. If a working-class family in Clark County wants to build a simple wooden deck in their backyard, city inspectors will scrutinize every single nail and fine them if a permit is 1 day late. Yet, when a billionaire's tech company wants to bore a 12-foot diameter tunnel under the busiest tourist corridor on Earth, we essentially allow them to grade their own homework. And what was the terrifying result of this regulatory escape hatch? While executives enjoyed their lack of oversight, unmarked company trucks were documented shedding thick, hazardous mud all across public streets. An assistant roads manager even reported that these heavy trucks had absolutely no license plates, and the driving routes provided to the county were totally false. Imagine the absolute chaos this creates for everyday commuters who share those roads. This is the core problem with the new Vegas dream. When you eliminate the basic red tape designed to keep citizens safe, you do not get a utopian future. You get a corporate Wild West, where the rules only apply to the people who cannot afford to buy their way out of them. Part 5. The privately funded illusion. And this brings us to the biggest lie of all: the financial setup. Whenever local politicians defend this project, they repeat the exact same talking point. They constantly claim the Vegas Loop is, quote, privately funded at absolutely no cost to taxpayers. They aggressively sell it to the public as a brilliant, risk-free gift of innovation. But when you actually follow the money, the public is deeply and heavily entangled in this mess. The Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, LVCVA, the public tourism agency for Southern Nevada, awarded the Boring Company a $48.7 million contract funded by hotel room taxes that are supposed to serve the public. Local tourism officials, like the LVCVA board chair, continue to insist that approvals were only given after ensuring strict public safety. They claim the system is appropriately regulated. But common sense tells a very different story. If this highly experimental transit system ultimately underperforms, or if a catastrophic environmental cleanup is suddenly required down the line, who exactly do you think is going to cover the bill? It certainly will not be the executives who wrote the custom loopholes. And this situation has spiraled so completely out of control that the federal government is now stepping in to investigate the state itself. In late 2025, Federal OSHA officially opened an investigation into whether Nevada's safety regulators are even capable of doing their jobs anymore. They are running a formal review to see if the state program is even, quote, at least as effective as the national standard. Think about the absolute absurdity of that for a moment. State regulators were so quick to erase penalties for a connected tech giant that the federal government had to intervene just to figure out what went wrong. It is a humiliating reality check for local officials. But here is the ugly truth about this so-called private innovation. When a massive corporation is allowed to dig 68 miles of tunnels under public streets with almost zero serious oversight, the ultimate financial risk always falls back onto the taxpayer. While billionaires get to test out their futuristic toys, everyday citizens are essentially held hostage as the ultimate insurance policy. Part 6. The breaking point. But the absolute peak of this regulatory nightmare finally hit a breaking point in February of 2026. State lawmakers hauled these agencies into a massive, multi-hour legislative hearing. And what nobody expected was how brutally honest the testimony would actually be. Lawmakers completely lost their patience with the endless corporate excuses. They recognized the cold truth that public policy experts have warned about for years. Slapping a tiny fine on a $7 billion empire does absolutely nothing to deter future violations. Assemblyman Howard Watts publicly labeled the Boring Company a, quote, serial bad actor. He looked directly at the head of the Environmental Protection Division and asked if the company actively struggles with compliance. Her answer? Just a simple, devastating yes. And that changed everything. Because the questioning quickly pivoted from civil fines right into criminal territory. State Senator Rochelle Nguyen looked at the timeline of the erased firefighter fines and the magically disappearing government records, and completely tore into the regulators. She explicitly framed this not just as a construction issue, but as a massive, fundamental test of whether our entire system of accountability has completely collapsed. She demanded to know where the breaking point was. She asked the exact question every single working-class taxpayer is thinking right now. Does one person get sick? Do 100 people have to get sick? Does someone have to die? She did not hold back for a single second. She publicly called out the vanishing case files as a potential Category C felony and directly accused the state of providing, quote, blatant special treatment. But here is the ugly truth. When you summon the governor's office to explain their involvement in this massive mess, they simply decline the invitation. They do not even bother to show up and answer to the public. To the average American watching this unfold, it feels exactly like watching an organized cover-up happening right out in the open. It proves that the regulatory watchdog has been completely defanged, turned into nothing more than a glorified lapdog for the billionaire class. Part 7. The housing affordability paradox. And this brings us to the ultimate betrayal. The very reason this entire scandal feels so deeply insulting to the average American. Right now, we are living through the absolute worst housing affordability crisis in modern history. To comfortably afford a typical US home today, a median income household has to put down an insane $127,000. Within Clark County, Nevada, where Las Vegas and Paradise sit, it is a complete disaster. The median home price has skyrocketed to nearly $440,000. According to Zillow and Redfin housing data, a standard mortgage now consumes a back-breaking 44% of a local family's median income. The corporate counterpoint is always exactly the same. Politicians claim that luxury developments and tech projects bring in massive tax revenue, and that wealth eventually trickles down to help everyone. But here is the ugly truth. There is absolutely no trickle-down. While working-class families are literally priced out of their own hometowns, local governments are bending over backwards to subsidize a billionaire's private tunnel. This is why every dollar of political capital and room tax revenue diverted to the Vegas Loop is an opportunity cost in the middle of the worst housing affordability crisis. They are spending their limited political bandwidth and millions of public dollars on an underground amusement ride, while the people who actually serve the food, clean the hotel rooms, and build the city are left with absolutely nothing. But if you step back and look at the broader landscape, this is simply the inevitable life cycle of corporate overreach. Markets and political systems eventually self-correct. Right now, Las Vegas is testing the absolute limits of what consumers and taxpayers will tolerate. When you optimize a city entirely for the super rich, you eventually hollow out the working class that actually keeps the machine running. And when the workers can no longer afford to live there, the service quality drops, the tourists stop coming, and the revenue dries up. Prices and policies must eventually come back down to reality. History proves over and over again that when corporations push the public too far, the public finally pushes back. So, what do you think is the real solution here? Should state regulators face criminal charges for erasing those fines? Or is this just the unavoidable cost of doing business in a modern tech economy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you appreciate this kind of deep dive investigation into the hard financial truths, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss an update. I hope you will check out the source links below and form your own opinions. See you in the next one.